I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard Knock Life.
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard Knock Life. Comics, movies, and TV, yeah. Pop culture with a
Welcome to Hard Knock Life. I am Keith Chow.
I'm Brittany Monet.
I'm Dominic Ma.
I'm Jamal Michelle.
Jamal Michelle, what's up? It's been a minute.
What's going on, man? Yeah, it has been a very long time. Sorry I escaped into the world of video games, but it's been very fun, man. Miss chopping it up with y'all, but I'm glad to be on this one.
Well, let's get into it because we got a lot to talk about. A couple movies, a couple streaming series. But before we kick it all off, I wanted you, Jamal, to talk about what you've been doing since you've taken a break from the podcast. You haven't taken a break from Nerds of Color. What have you been doing for the NOC?
No, man. For one, I just appreciate getting to be in the NOC space, to make all this stuff happen. You hooked me up with the gaming editor title a few months back, and since then I was like, cool, all right, just playing video games around the clock. My wife is gonna kill me. My wife is really tired of hearing about video games, so
it's for work, sweetie.
Yeah, I know. Like I swear, just one more hour. But it's been super fun. Since then, we got to cover E3. We got to cover the Anime Expo, the 2021 Expo Lite that went online. We're about to cover DreamHack Beyond, which is another online expo. It's interesting because all these expos are in this weird space now because folks are like, hey, pandemic's over, no more vaccines, no more masks, and they want things to go in person. And these, events are like, nah,
California's like, hold up.
Exactly.
Let's everybody put masks back on.
I mean, literally, right? Didn't they just do that with restaurants or something?
It starts today that you have to wear masks, whether you are vaccinated or not. But now, and there's stupid reports coming out where they're like, well, it looks like people who aren't vaccinated weren't wearing masks. And it's like, you really expected people to, like, go on the honor system of that? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who don't like wearing the mask just because they're uncomfortable, which I understand they are. I have to wear them all the time because I'm a barista. Right. And so I get it. I wear it all day at work. And I get that they're uncomfortable. But I was still wearing them because I was like, no, I don't want to. Not everyone at my work is vaccinated. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. I'm not going to force people to do something they don't want to do with their bodies. I fully get that. Not going to push that on people. But it's like, still, it's not safe if, obviously this is the thing. The only reason they're not going to do a shutdown again is because the economy, they care more about the economy than people's lives. So they're kind of like, if you're not vaccinated and you die, well, that's on you. We told you. Like, that's how they're doing it,
That's also the thing, too. Like, 99% of the cases are unvaccinated people now.
Yeah.
So.
And also, yeah, I mean, especially in Los Angeles and Southern California, which is like the focal point of all these conventions and all these gatherings. I mean, we should remember it would have been Comic-Con this weekend. It is going to be a virtual one in some form. So
that's right. I mean, we'll get to it later in Nerd Poppin' because basically what I'm nerd popping about this week is all of the toy reveals that would have been at Comic-Con that they're just putting on the internet right now. But back to the gaming space. In addition to covering all these virtual conventions, Jamal, you've been holding it down on our Twitch channel, and you're about to launch an NOC gaming newsletter. Talk about that.
Yeah, man, it's been super dope. It's been exciting. I realize there's only so much. There are only so many posts I can make before I just lose my mind because there's so much news dropping. So we've got the newsletter going. The link is on the website. There's literally a tab that just says newsletter. Drop your email. And every week I will be dropping just a newsletter that covers all the breaking gaming news as well as indie titles. And then we're looking at we've got like a creator spotlight, folks that have had the opportunity to interview and whatnot. And yeah, back in May, at the beginning of May, we launched the Twitch channel. So we're at twitch.tv/the Nerds of Color. Be sure to hook us up with a follow. And now you can subscribe. So since May, you couldn't subscribe to the channel. We weren't affiliate yet. We just hit affiliate, which was a little bit of a grind. But shout outs to everyone, folks who've been following, folks who've been watching. So I'm super excited. I'm going to be streaming way more Pokemon and Mario games now. And I'm trying to get my hands on a way to stream the Spider-Man games because I no longer have my PS4, PS5, but never had a PS5, but I don't have PS4, but
so they'll send
Sony,
you
if you're
one of
listening,
these days.
Yeah, Sony, if you're listening,
They're hard to get through normal channels.
Exactly, my gosh. So I'm looking forward to it. There's a bunch of crazy stuff coming out, but the gaming side of things has been super duper fun, And we just saw Space Jam, so that capped off a really fun last few months.
Well, let's play some Dom Ball, but before we do,
I misspoke earlier. I'm Dom Ball Mob.
Domball.
Ball Ma. Or Dom Ball Ma, which would be...
Was that supposed to be a play on words? Did I miss something? Like, Dom Ball? Was that supposed to...
Well, could it be playing on? I don't know. The mind wanders. Like sub-Dom Ball? Like that kind of play on words? I don't think they were going... I don't think they were going there.
I mean, he's like a 10-year-old kid coming up with
I think he just put his own name on the game. He wasn't thinking that.
Yeah.
I mean, he does dominate at basketball within his own game.
Well, speaking of Dom Ball, Dom's always been on our case about not covering enough video games. So hopefully you and Jamal can link up and do some stuff on the Twitch side of things.
Yeah, we will merge.
Yeah, we could probably break down that game too. Give it a review. Review Dom Ball and see
With
how...
the imaginary video game in Space Jam?
Actually...
Which should be a real game. It looks like a cool game.
I thought
it's
it would
NBA
have.
Jam, essentially.
They
right?
released a Space Jam game on Xbox though. It's kind of like it looks like almost like a Flash game, something you play on a web browser, but they released that on like Xbox or something, to obviously build up the hype for the movie, but the game that they showcased, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
For all I know, it's probably in the works. Especially now that the movie's a hit. It's the number one movie in America, despite the fact that it's playing on HBO Max. It made $32 million. Supplanted Black Widow at the box office.
I would argue aided by HBO Max's smart hybrid model. That's what I would argue.
Well, I know Dom's also been on the We Should Stream Everything kick as well. But Jamal referenced earlier, LeBron tweeted out, like, sorry haters when it dominated the box office. And particularly because... And the reason Jamal returned, as someone who watched the film, loved the film, who loves LeBron James, let's put that out there. Full disclosure, all cards on the table. You had some things to say about the critical reception that Space Jam got.
Yeah.
Over the last several weeks before the movie even came out.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we went live too. How it's just really strange how critical people are being of this very clear like children's movie. Like, the IPs are going to be there, sure. But it's just so weird because I wrote it in the review that the critics gave Ready Player One a lot more love. That's a Spielberg movie. Of course, you're going to get that kind of wiggle room. And Ready Player One was an IP extravaganza, like left and right all over the place. But suddenly it's too much for Space Jam. But I mostly looked at how beautiful the story was. And it was a story about, like, black joy and just a black kid being super excited and super happy, engaging with a thing that we don't often get to see like, kids of color engage in, like video games. The ESCA just dropped their demographic report about what gamers look like. And for the first time in, I think, ever, we got a clear picture painted of like the background of gamers. It's near 73% of the 4,000 people who submitted info for the report are white. So that is a large number, but we tend to overlook the fact that other communities like to play games, and it was just fun to see that. And, fun to see LeBron be in that space as a athlete actor who has no, professional training aside from the people on set. I think he did a great job considering the other athlete actors. And he's come a long way. And in Trainwreck...
Who were in the movie, too.
Exactly. So I just thought it was really great. I thought it was a beautiful, black, joyous movie, and its message about family and about a father-son relationship that goes through the ups and downs that you would often see. That might be cliche. Who gives a damn? The movie was, like, really, really fucking cool. Yeah. And I appreciated all the IP. It was really nostalgic. It was dope as hell.
Well, I'll get to that, too. But before we do, Brittany, what were some of your thoughts? Because I know you were saying before we recorded that, like, it was a kid's movie. It was exactly what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, it was fun, and I think that a lot of critics, and even just other people who maybe aren't actual film critics, I think you need to stop judging your stuff whether something is going to be Oscar worthy or not. Like, you're not going to critique Nomadland and Space Jam 2 the same way. Like, they are totally two different films, and I'm just like, it boggles my mind that people do this. And I understand people complaining about the IP issues and whatever, but it was a fun kids movie. It was loony, like Looney Tunes. It's supposed to be loony and ridiculous and like over the top, and it's just supposed to be a fun movie, something that kids enjoyed. I don't even like basketball, and I like Space Jam. Like, I don't like sports, but Space Jam is a fun movie for me. Like, I don't know. People are just so weird. It's like, I get it. You don't have to like it, but like, you don't need to judge it the same way you would Nomadland.
And I feel like the criticism was beyond just even comparing it to Nomadland. It was really like vitriolic. It was like,
it's an abomination. The word abomination was used in one of the reviews. Like, really?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a... Film Twitter was a mistake, I think, is what it boils down to. Like, pretentious assholes who just love, no pun intended, dunking on a movie like this, because they can't dunk in real life, right? So let's just... This is the only way I get to dunk on LeBron is, like, you did a shitty movie. Dominic, being the namesake of the film, like, what was your overall opinion? Because you are a basketball fan.
I was happy to have such a big role in LeBron's.
Every time LeBron was like, Dominic!
Yeah. And I had a little conversation with my brother about, like, the thinking that went into not including his own kids who are,
his real kid, right? Like,
I
mean, Bronny's going to be famous one day. I'm surprised he didn't actually call his oldest son Bronny
in their own right. But I mean, I understand that you don't want to make your family like too close to the like to this like
didn't stop
big fictional
Michael,
movie.
but whatever.
Didn't stop Michael. Right? It's a choice. It's a trade-off. They made the choice to make a fictional guy named Dom who creates the video game thing. And yeah, I mean, all I could think of really while watching it was, I thought it worked great as a kid's movie and a joyful movie. I did think of you, Keith, because, for context, let's remember that Keith is the guy who's complained 4 or 5 times about how HBO Max is not called Warner Brothers Plus.
It should not be.
We all understand. We've had this fight, and we might be able to have it again. But yeah, you're the guy who like wanted it to be called Warner Brothers Plus just to give legacy to the old stuff, right?
Yeah.
Didn't you turn out to be the villain of this movie? I mean, basically, wasn't that what they laid out? Was like cheesy Wonder Brothers compilation movie?
I'm Algae Rhythm, you basically.
Basically advocated for what Algae Rhythm wanted to do.
In order to capitalize on the success of this film, they should rebrand HBO Max as the Serververse, because that's a better name than HBO Max.
I mean, it was really funny, and it was an advertisement, but it got you into that thing. Oh, they're just basically bouncing through all the hubs on HBO Max.
Yes, that's what I loved about this movie.
So, it was very meta in that way. It was like, oh, you're inside the streaming app. Whoa.
Yes, I mean, 100%. That's the thing. As I was watching the movie, so again, all cards on the table. We've talked about this on the podcast before when you weren't on, Jamal, because I know how much of a LeBron fan you are. I am not typically a LeBron James fan because I'm much older than you. I am a Michael Jordan fan.
Yes,
Michael A. Jordan, as it were.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, that was so good. I was like, he's gonna show up. He's gonna show up, and then as soon as I was like, wait, that's not him.
The moment he said it, I knew. I was like, MJ's not in this movie. The way, and it's Sylvester who was introducing this guy. I'm like, it's not. And I saw the sneakers, and for some reason thought Michael B. Jordan, but not because of his name. I don't even know why. I was like, Michael B. Jordan? Oh, wait.
As soon as Sylvester said we found Michael Jordan, I knew it was going to be B. Jordan, just because of Ryan Coogler's involvement in the movie.
That's so true.
And,
shoot.
I didn't even think of that.
I didn't catch that.
But it was perfect. It was a perfect joke.
I think I was just so into the movie that I'm like, it's gotta be Michael Jordan.
Man. I was a little heartbroken. And
I feel like that's sad to say. I was disappointed to see Michael B. Jordan. I was like,
never. You can never be disappointed to see Michael B. Jordan.
I was like, oh, this is not what I asked for.
So, and it may be blasphemous because I know some of the hate has been putting the first Space Jam movie on a pedestal too. It's not even just like critics comparing this to Oscar-worthy fare. It's like all of a sudden the first Space Jam wasn't also a cash grab.
Right, like it's amazing now. The acting was superb. Or Michael Jordan, how could you try and surpass him? Like, oh, you weren't saying that before this movie?
I am the biggest MJ stan in the world, and I will fully admit that Space Jam 1 was also a corporatist IP Nike crossover. You know what I'm saying?
That's the thing. Kids don't think about that because, again, these are targeted for kids. And it's not saying that adults can't enjoy them, but these, again, at the end of the day, are targeted for kids, regardless, especially with the new one, regardless if you saw the old one or not, it is still for kids. That's it. So it's just like, little kids are not going to think, oh, yeah, you know, Warner Brothers is trying to sell me on, like, a Nike and Looney Tunes at the same time. Cool. Like, I didn't think about that. Like,
yeah.
You know,
and, you know, it's been Looney Tunes, like, part of their, you know, brand, for lack of a better word, is kind of the meta Warner Brothers commentary, right? Like, Animaniacs is also an offshoot of Looney Tunes, and they lived in the fucking Warner Brothers tower. You know what I'm saying? Like, the whole point of, like, Bugs Bunny is this meta character that can go easily in and out of all of the different, like, Warner properties. And, you know, I just don't understand why that is all of a sudden, like, the fourth rail. Or the third rail? What is it? What's the rail you're not supposed to
third rail is pretty bad.
Third rail, right? Is it third rail? Right?
Fourth rail is when you've broken the third rail.
Which is what they do too.
But we're more conscious of that kind of thing now, and rightly so. I mean, I think it's worth mentioning that, like, I know for people of a certain age, the original Space Jam is very close to their hearts. It's sort of like their Star Wars. I mean, people who are a little older, well, so a good bit older than me. Sorry, a good bit younger than me.
See, I saw Star Wars first
and,
before I saw Space Jam.
Yeah,
though.
I mean, not
there is
everybody. Yeah. I'm just saying some people who don't dig on the 70s, 80s things that they're remaking right now really have a soft spot in their heart for Space Jam. I'm just saying, it has that power. It's not just like...
I mean, the soundtrack, entire
right.
soundtrack.
That was the thing. This soundtrack, like, I remember one thing I do remember without remembering the plot of the original Space Jam was like a breakout hit was freaking R. Kelly's "I Believe I Can Fly."
Yeah, I mean, thank God there was no.
That's not going to happen again. But I didn't know if there was a soundtrack hit from this one. I don't know. If
I mean, the R. Kelly song is problematic in multiple ways just because it's R. Kelly. But like,
it certainly is.
You know, for the last 25 years, every freaking graduation was "I Believe I Can Fly." Right?
Damn
like,
right.
Yeah, but fuck that dude, one. And two,
yeah.
one of my biggest gripes is that people keep, like, all over one of the hashtags is Space Jam 2. No, that's not what this is.
Legacy. This is a new legacy.
Yeah, this is not a sequel. There's not even like a hint. I mean,
there's a little. I mean,
right.
I appreciated that, like, a couple like references to the old one. Like,
right. Like,
it was been 25 years and all that.
When
stuff.
Bugs was like, "That sounds familiar," like having to win the basketball game, but this is not. There's no continuation. Yeah. So that was just a small thing gripe I had. I was like, what? Of all things, though.
Well, so I was going to say, being the biggest MJ stan in the world, I had reservations going into Space Jam. A New Legacy. I almost said Space Jam 2. And I got to say, I was won over. Like, LeBron won me over. Like, his chemistry with Sonequa Martin Green was amazing. Mm-hmm. His chemistry with his kids is amazing. I like, to your point, Jamal, I love that it's the point of the movie is about, like, black joy and black fatherhood and the father-son dynamic, and also like the idea of, you know, the kid who doesn't want to play basketball. Mm-hmm. He wants to be a computer engineer, right? Like, that's cool. And I thought Don Cheadle was actually a really good villain. There were people who were surprised.
Yeah,
he deserves an award for this more than he deserves an award for Falcon Winter Soldier.
Oh boy,
which he got an Emmy nomination for his like 5-second appearance in the first episode. But
yeah,
anyway,
that was interesting.
I was going to say, to your point just now, Keith, and we were talking about it earlier. Like, the moment the movie started, I turned to my wife and I was just like, "Man, it would have been so great if his own family was in this. It would have been so awesome." But then I'm like, imagine trying to convince us that Bronny Jr. does not want to play basketball.
Yeah,
or that he's like just moderately decent at the game.
Right.
So that'd
right.
be more
it would be a bad look for him. He's on.
Right. He wouldn't know. So. It works out. I mean, the cast was incredible too.
Yeah. So I just wanted to put out there, I big fan of the second movie. As someone who loves the first one, you know, I was a little bit older than the people who grew up with Space Jam. But again, being an MJ stan, I had to like it, even if I thought it was not good.
Yeah,
I can't in my heart admit that it's not
Absolutely.
good. But no, Space Jam: A New Legacy is a worthy successor. And everyone who's out here like shitting on it, I just don't understand what. Maybe they're like me and they just can't see beyond their like MJ nostalgia. But yeah, like I said, I was the biggest, you know, detractor going into the movie. I watched it. It totally. I think they sold me on the Warner Brothers IP.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
That's the thing I loved about it.
Same.
I love seeing them go in and out of the Matrix and Casablanca.
That was
because to
so
Dom's point,
awesome.
it's like this is what I've always wanted HBO Max to be.
Yeah.
This is
they
the
didn't
best
go into
commercial.
any of the HBO series as far as like.
Well, they went to Game of Thrones.
They went to
did
Game
Game
of
of
Thrones.
Thrones.
They did go to Game of Thrones. My bad.
And they had the Night King.
They did a TNT reference, which again, like they showed all the facets
Right.
of HBO Max.
So I mean,
essentially.
stuff like that is a big advertisement for
Huge,
their whole
yeah.
empire.
But then
we
so
gotta
was the
get that.
first one, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
like.
Well,
Like when you
yes,
actually, for a
they
lot
both
of
were
people,
big advertisements.
when you say Space Jams, you think of those Jordans, right? Like the Space Jams for the last 25 years are the specific Jordans he wore in the movie.
Right.
You know, like it's
Oh
always
my gosh!
been
I had
a giant.
both.
Yeah.
I had both. Man, I had both pairs. I had the ones that were like in 2009, and then the whatever came out a few years later. But
Yeah, the Space Jams are still way better shoes than the 19s that LeBron's are wearing.
Oh
Sorry,
my
LeBron.
God.
The one thing that's not going to happen out of New Legacy, no one's going to be calling LeBron 19 Space Jams 20 years from now.
no, and no, those I don't think any athlete. I mean, no athlete will be able to beat what MJ set up. But overall,
Right.
loved it.
So that's the Space Jam talk. Jamal, I know that you haven't seen Loki, so if you want to log off the podcast right now,
I'm going to.
We're about to spoil
skedaddle.
some Loki shit.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you joining for this first half talking about Space Jam. But before you go, can you tell folks how to find you and just give one more plug to the gaming side of NOC?
For sure. So on Twitter, I'm at Jamal NOC. Got a brand new name. Totally easy now. It's totally simple. So I have to rebrand myself. It's at Jamal NOC on Twitter, at Jamal NOC on Instagram. I'm dropping all of the gaming news on the Nerds of Color blog, and our channel is twitch.tv/the Nerds of Color, all one word. If you're not following already, that would be super, super appreciated. And you could subscribe now as well. And the schedule is mostly Wednesdays and Thursdays, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern. And those updates go out anyway, so if it changes, y'all will definitely know.
Jamal, once again, congrats on all of the success you've been having with the gaming side, and hopefully we'll see you on the podcast again soon.
For sure. Thanks again, man, and y'all have a good one. And when I'm done with Loki, we could talk, which will probably take me a few weeks, but whatever. I'm going to be ducking and dodging spoilers, but...
Yeah, good luck with that. Don't listen to this podcast.
Oh, yeah, I need to remember that, too. All right, y'all.
But share it. Encourage other people to listen to it.
There you go. All right, well, let's take a break, and then after the break, we'll come back with some Loki news.
This ain't just a Toy Story or a foreign unboxing. These are the stories of action, toy glory, and work clocking. SH Figuarts, Black Series are hot toys. And figures with transformation sequences that make noise. Check out the joints and the many points of articulation. We're celebrating the global collector nation. Sit back, relax, and get ready to rock this. Here's the real Chow. Welcome to Shelf
Hey, this is Keith Chow, and I want to talk to you about a brand new show coming to the Hard Knock Media Network. Shelf Conscious is all about being a collector of toys, action figures, and everything in between. We're going to be talking to fellow collectors, folks from the toy industry, and media properties related to toys and action figures like Masters of the Universe and Snake Eyes. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube.com/The Nerds of Color, and follow us on Twitter at ShelfConNOC. Also, special shout out to Jamie Noguchi for the artwork and the dope theme music. So that's Shelf Conscious, the podcast where we come collect. See you soon. All right, now that we're back without Jamal.
Yeah, we do respect people's spoiler preferences in our gatherings. I just want to say we don't disregard them.
Yeah, we're not going to talk shit about Jamal that he's not on the podcast anymore.
Dude, that's not the purpose of this.
No, but we will talk about the season finale. And we can call it the season finale since, spoilers, there's going to be a second season.
I already just kind of had a feeling because I think the writer, was it Michael Waldron, who kind of said, oh yeah, we have enough stuff to do another season if they grant it. So I was like, so there's gonna be a season 2. That's his way of saying there's gonna be a season 2, but can't say it officially, So when they announced it at the end of the season, I was like, okay, all right, I knew it. I was already prepared for it.
Also, frankly, they were just not going to wrap up all that stuff neatly. And for whatever reason, they had
especially in 6 episodes.
Yeah. I mean, for whatever it's worth, the other series so far have had an arc that kind of resolved and sort of felt like a mini-series. This one is opening up so much stuff. You're like, this, if you jam this all into 6 episodes, it's going to be, crushed as hell at the end. Anyway.
Well, so let's get into it. If you're like Jamal and haven't watched episode 6 or any of the episodes, we're going to spoil the entire season. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you cut the podcast when Jamal left, and if you're still listening, then sorry for you if you haven't watched the show. Now that that's out of the way, we had speculated that the villain, or not the villain, because it turns out that He Who Remains is not that villainous, but the person behind the TVA, the man behind the curtain, as it were. We had speculated perhaps Kang, perhaps another Loki, and when Jonathan Majors showed up behind that elevator door, what was your reactions? Because this was like a Mephisto level reveal, right? Because people were speculating that Mephisto was in WandaVision, and then when it didn't happen, people were pissed. People were speculating Mephisto was the power broker. No, they weren't, but when that didn't happen.
No, and then people, when it came for the first episode of Loki, when he was...
Oh, the devil.
Owen Wilson, they said the devil, so everyone was like, it's Mephisto. But, I was just like, I don't know. I really felt like... Because the rumors had been going around, too, that Jonathan Majors was going to be in Loki. And so I was just like, okay, it's either going to be a Loki himself or I was on board with it being Kang, one of those two. And yeah, when when those elevator doors opened, I was like, oh shit! I think I tweeted that because I was just like, I didn't really think they were gonna do it, but they did it, so I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised they were able to keep that secret. Like, that's a pretty big reveal that no one speculated that, like, why is Jonathan Majors in Atlanta? You know what I mean? Like, usually that kind of stuff would be, figured out beforehand.
But he could have been filming a Lovecraft Country at the same time. And I think they both filmed in Atlanta, so it was just like, no one would have thought anything, That's the thing. If you've already worked in that area for something, people might assume that it's more of the other things, But what day he had?
Until, for you guys on the West Coast and us on the East Coast, like, at some point, like, 3:30 in the morning on the East Coast, no one knew who was going to open that door, so the fact that you can keep a spoiler like that in this day and age is a remarkable thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was dope.
It was a cool surprise.
Dominic, you being a Marvel head from way back, can you give us a quick download on Kang the Conqueror?
Oh, yeah. Kang the Conqueror first appears basically in Avengers 8. I was just rereading the compilation of his first official appearance in that old issue of Avengers. He's a guy much like he describes in the show. He's a time-traveling guy, and there are many different variations of him. That's why when I say it's a first appearance, well, whatever, he's also Rama Tut and the Fantastic Four and all this other things. But basically, he's a guy who bounces through time, and there are a million variants of him, and he is trying to conquer everything that he sees with his advanced technology, and he typically has a purple and blue outfit, which we have not exactly seen, but have seen hinted at in the design of Loki.
Right.
And I think it's really, really interesting if he's being set up to be the big bad continuous through the next couple phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I was curious what you guys thought about that.
Well, it's interesting, too, because in the comics, the creator of the Time Variance Authority is a character called He Who Remains, but He Who Remains in the comics is not a variation of Kang the Conqueror. So they kind of blended two characters in one, and saying that He Who Remains is a Kang variant. And so I thought that was interesting. I know that Kang variants, like, there's another Kang variant called, like, Immortus or something, who's, like, another immortal time traveling.
Yeah, there's a zillion of them. And what I want to say, basically, is this is an interesting reveal paired with, say, like, the news that Marvel's not doing it, 9-movie contracts anymore, if that's true. It makes practical sense, because the actors aren't probably going to go for that anymore. I just wonder if their multiverse is a clever story way of leaving themselves a device by which they can recast or do variants of people at any times, because they don't honestly know if the actors are going to hold through the next 3 years or whatever. They have all these unknowns, right? And a fairly simple way of dealing with that story-wise is opening up this multiverse. Jonathan Majors himself, I mean, I'm not saying, like, anything about who Kang the Conqueror... I think it's unknown quantity yet how they're going to develop Kang the Conqueror. But just to put it out there, he has a million variants. He could be played by anybody.
Yeah. Well, and they've already set him up to be the villain in Quantumania, which is the Ant-Man and the Wasp sequel.
That we knew that he was going to be the bad guy. But I love that when we see him in Loki, and he's, like, talking about everything, and he knows all up until the moment when they pretty much have to decide what they want to do. And he makes it very clear, like, I'm not the worst. He makes it very clear, I'm the nicest. So, like, even though I totally ruined your life, Sylvie, like, I'm the nicest one out of them all. So,
and that's an interesting choice, isn't it? I mean, he's not that threatening. He's this sort of playful thing. He reminds me more of, like, a Joker type character. And it reminds me that one thing the MCU is missing is it doesn't really have the villain as compelling as the Joker, for better or for worse. I mean, Thanos, whatever, like, Thanos is overused, but at least he's, like, a big threatening guy. You can say whatever you want about whether he's cheesy or not, but he provided that continuing sort of looming big cosmic unbeatable threat, which hung over the first phase up to Endgame. Now they have to come up with a new big bad, and what will his style be? I think that's what I'm just wondering out loud.
Well, I also wonder how he's going to play Kang and Ant-Man, because, as to your point, he did play He Who Remains goofy. I wouldn't even say Joker, at least there is a menace.
It reminds me more of Willy Wonka.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it was definitely, and even the story was Willy
Who's
Wonka.
a really good villain in a way.
Yeah. Well, it was the same story too. It's like, I just wanted you to take over the factory, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It's the same story.
And they
And
both
it's
have
kind of
evil.
it's kind of spooky the way I say everything.
He plays it much more like a Willy Wonka than what you would think, even, like Oz the Great and Powerful would have been, which is another kind of reference. But yeah, he comes off really goofy, and I was actually thrown off the first time I watched it. Like, I wasn't sure. I was, especially, not knowing anything and just kind of basking in the surprise of, like, being right about Kang, and I was like, oh, they actually went there. And then he was like, because he definitely doesn't play it the way he plays Lovecraft Country, right? Like, to show his range. Like, he's a completely different character. And there's, like, no menace to him whatsoever. Like, he's giggly and he's goofy, even when he's, like, watching Sylvie and Loki have a sword battle. He's just, like, giggling in the background. Yeah. Very much like not even the Gene Wilder Willy Wonka. He very much reminds me of the Johnny Depp Willy Wonka.
Yeah, it's a good reference.
Weirder. But so I was a little thrown off by his act. So I was wondering, what you guys thought about, like, Major's performance in this role, in this version of Kang. Because I think when we get to Quantumania, he's probably going to play it way different. And even seeing the statue is supposed to be more menacing than what he was giving you inside the castle. But Brittany, what did you think of his performance?
I literally tweeted, "Baby, he is eating," and that was about his
giant ham
performance.
sandwich.
Because I thought he was serving. Like, I thought he was doing so well, especially because, and I've also seen him in the Five Bloods. So just like you said, his performances versus what we've seen him in, and this is just so different. It was so, but to me, it felt creepy. Even like it had that underlying creepiness, and he was doing it so well. And like I thought I was like, I feel like even Tom and Sophia are kind of like, whoa, what is he doing? And then reading an interview where they actually both said, yeah, like he was just making all these choices that we were blown away, that it was like hard to like stay fully in character with him just because of how well he was like giving us. And I was just like, I felt it. You could tell, like, it was just so good. I just thought it was like acting masterclass.
I definitely appreciated it more the second time around watching the episode. The first time I was a little thrown just because I wasn't expecting. I think, I was a victim of my own expectation, because once they revealed it was Kang, I was like, holy shit, all right, let's get some like real kind of like villain, monologuing. And he started like eating an apple and like giggling, and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And so I was a little thrown off, but then when I was expecting it, and kind of to Brittany's point, like observing like the acting choices he was making, I would say I was definitely intrigued the second time around.
I think it might be a really clever setup, because to be sure, it would be dumb if they just brought up another Thanos who was just physically overpowering everybody. I mean, it was obvious. The Marvel Universe has 1,000 such characters, just big bad dudes.
Right.
It makes sense to, and especially if it's sort of a tease, like, I'm the goofiest, nicest version of me you're going to see for the next 10 years. And it's a big acting challenge, but he's probably like got ideas about it. If every time we see him again, he's ramping up into a more dangerous version of this guy who we first met, who just seemed kind of goofy, like that could be much more threatening than Thanos. That could be a more successful villain arc than the one we got with. I mean, yeah. I'm really interested in the idea.
Did it make you want to see Quantumania more?
Well, it's years away.
Well, I like the I feel like I'm one of the few people who actually really, really love the Ant-Man movies. They're fun. They're like a nice little fun break from, like, I think the heaviness sometimes of the other movies, except for like Guardians of the Galaxy. So I just really like the Ant-Man movies, and I'm also a huge Lost fan, so I love seeing Lily, Evangeline Lilly. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just really excited. So now I'm even more excited because I feel like he's gonna be a little bit more evil than we just saw him.
Right.
Like we said, that makes him, I think, kind of the most like imposing villain, because if the first version of you meet of him, who's been trying to craft this timeline to also keep his other selves from jumping into this timeline, that's why he did it. Like, that's tells you something. Like, if he's already kind of seems like a little bad, but not extreme, like, we all know that the other versions are going to be much worse.
Right. The one thing I did appreciate, again, upon second watch, is once I kind of understood, okay, he's playing this character this way, it almost made sense to me, because, you're in a room with two Lokis, and he's the trickster. was kind of like really cool to me. Like Loki, the ultimate trickster in Norse mythology, getting out tricked from this character here. So I thought that was a really interesting choice. The other thing that I thought was cool, and this was the case even before the show, but in the casting of Jonathan Majors in general, is the notion that in the comics, Kang is a descendant of Reed Richards.
Yes.
So how close are we to William Jackson Harper as Mr. Fantastic?
Is that who you're pulling for Mr.
That's
Fantastic?
who I want.
That's a good
I want
idea.
Chidi. I want Chidi as Mr.
I want Raoul
Fantastic.
Coley.
Oh, okay.
But like people are like freaking out. They're like, "Well, how do you have like a white Reed Richards and then like a black Kang?" And I'm like, "Okay, they're from like so many centuries down the line,
like 2,000
and I'm
years
like,
later.
I'm half black, half Greek. There is somewhere in my ancestry where people are full Greek and full black, and that goes down for centuries down. So I'm just like, how is that confusing for people for this to happen? But that's why I'm like, it leaves room for anyone to be Reed Richards. Of course, I'm not opposed to a black Reed Richards. I'm not. But I feel like Raoul Coley is just like the dude. But I've seen people saying Ahmed Best as Reed Richards.
Really?
And I saw really good fan art. So I'm like, you know what? I'm on board. He deserves a second chance.
Yeah, that would be a good second chance for Ahmed Best. I mean, if we're talking about redemption arcs.
Yeah. I'm just partial. The whole time I was just thinking like, maybe this
But
guarantees us
I
Mr.
think
Chidi.
William said that he doesn't want to do any more roles like that, like the smart guy.
Oh,
I think he said that in an interview. So, as much as I feel like he would be a good Reed Richards, he might say no.
I mean, to be fair, you could just cast the entire Good Place cast as the Fantastic Four, and I'd be down with it. So
You could.
I mean, you did that Good Place Avengers crossover a few years ago, Dominic. Maybe you should do what if the Good Place was the Fantastic Four?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Kristen Bell's an easy mark for Invisible Woman, and then you have Reed Richards, and then what's his face is obviously the Thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, Jamila would be Johnny Storm, the show off, and then
that's a good idea.
Jason is Mendoza is the or I guess Tahani's the not Jamila, but Tahani is the show off, and Jason is the big dumb rock. So,
yeah, he is kind of like a big dumb rock. That would work very well.
Anyway,
super fan reunion casting.
Let's talk about the fact that the TVA is a black-owned business. There was a
It's a black-owned business.
I saw that.
Well, that's the meme on Twitter right now. And there was a great article in thegrio.com by Dr. Jason Johnson, who is an MSNBC contributor.
Yeah,
and he's also
a huge nerd. He's also always got action figures behind him in his.
Yeah, I actually want him on the podcast just to talk about his background.
Inquire. I bet he'd do it.
And he did this great article. I mean, some people were taking him to task on Twitter, but I think he was trying to be satirical. But he was talking about how the finale of Loki was actually a Black Lives Matter story, because ultimately, if you go back and look at the 6th episode, it's about a white woman who's complaining about a black business owner and wants to speak to the manager, and finally gets to the manager. And that's, I just thought it was
and
funny.
Against all, good ideas, kills him.
I mean,
which is dark.
It's funny.
If you want to go there,
but I mean, they
it is funny.
ruined her life. They ruined her life. This is the one time I might be on the white lady's side, just because, she was a little kid. They took her. They ruined her life and basically said because she exists, this is a threat to Kang having other versions of himself show up. That's literally what it is. He gets rid of these people so that there's no way.
The evil Kangs, right?
Which I understand that, but it's just
you got to do what you got to do. Episode podcast title: Brittany defends Karen. That's I think
right. Yes.
I don't think it maps on like that, because we don't.
I know it was. I just thought it
it's
was a funny
black-owned
article.
I do think Sylvie's arc is problematic because she's so set on this revenge arc. It becomes a little bit. I don't know. It's a little too easy for her just to be dead set on killing the guy, no matter the cost. But I do think it was interesting when people were comparing it to Star-Lord's bad choice in Infinity War, for example.
Well,
sometimes characters make bad choices just to move the plot along, and we know Marvel Universe characters do this.
Yes, but I felt like this felt more reminiscent of The Last Jedi to me than anything. I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of Kylo and Rey stuff happening in this whole dynamic, and I like it.
Okay.
So it felt
that kiss gave some Reylo vibes to me too. When,
Yeah, I think, and there's a lot of people who are like even more hardcore shippers of Reylo than I am, who are just like, this is what we wanted from Star Wars. So I'm just like, yeah, I know, I can tell. It's very much so close to that. But a lot of it reminds me of it. I can see it.
Well, and we talked about it a couple weeks ago when some fans edited the throne room battle with the Timekeepers throne room battle. But speaking of the Timekeepers and the timey-wimey stuff of the multiverse, you know, Dominic, you made a great point earlier about how this is their way, Marvel's way of, you know, kind of getting out of some of those actor contracts and some of the story corners that they write themselves in.
Keeping their options open, I think, is
exactly, because coming out of Loki, we're going right into What If, which, you know, I've been seeing a lot of people surprised that What If is in canon, and I was like, that was kind of obvious from the jump.
It was always going to be in canon,
right? That this was more than just What If. It was like, here are the other universes, right? Because that's going to lead directly into Spider-Man No Way Home, which is going to lead into Multiverse of Madness. The one, you know, we didn't talk about the What If trailer last week, but I was a little disappointed because one of the big selling points at Comic-Con when they announced What If is that it would be the Marvel actors voicing their animated counterparts. And, you know, this is actually going to be Chadwick Boseman's final performance as T'Challa in What If. There's Chris Hemsworth is coming back. But unfortunately, like, Robert Downey Jr. isn't voicing Iron Man. I think Brie Larson isn't voicing Captain Marvel. So it's a little disappointing that some of the actors didn't come back for.
That's because some of them, they found good voice actors who are good sound-alikes for Robert Downey Jr.
I hope they are.
Again, I can attest to this from playing the video games. Sometimes they get a good sound-alike, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. I mean, I hope they do like a Clone Wars and get actors who do sound like their live-action counterparts, because I don't know, the guy playing Robert Downey Jr. in the trailer, I was a little like,
okay, I haven't heard that.
That doesn't sound like
I've heard the guy
RDJ.
in the video game doing a very good Robert Downey Jr. imitation, and I think you should get that guy from now on for the voiceover stuff.
So the timey-wimey stuff about this one, you know, now that the multiverse is set free, I'm a little confused about the ending, because I was under the assumption that, like, the TVA sat outside of the timeline, right? Like, because Infinity Stones have no power in the TVA. Like, that scene in the first episode is still, like, so powerful to me that, like, the Tesseract and the Power Stone, they were just sitting in a drawer because, you know, the TVA just exists outside of time and space. So how could, you know, the Loki's breaking the timeline actually affect what's happening at the TVA? That's the thing that I still don't. Especially because, like, Back to the Future logic doesn't work in the MCU.
I think it's because it caused so many rifts in time doing that, and now all these other Kangs are able to come into the universe. That means there has to be another Kang who might be similar in mind to the one that we saw, who also maybe built his own TVA, because Loki is at a different TVA at the end of that episode. I don't know if you guys realize that.
It's got to be a different TVA, right?
Yes, he's with a different
By
set
different,
of...
do you mean branched version?
Right.
Yes, like a branch version, a different reality, like a different
Well, that's what I
timeline.
mean. I get that because, like, that's the only thing that makes sense. But at the same time, I was like, how can you branch the TVA if the TVA exists outside of time?
That's why there has to
like,
be another one.
why don't like Infinity Stones work inside the, like, because these are all Infinity Stones from other realities sitting in Pillboy. Speaking of the Good Place, sitting in Pillboy's drawer. If they're just branches off, I mean, this is where it starts to hurt your head and you need to smoke a joint before you start thinking about it.
Well, that's why I'm just assuming the thing that makes the most sense to me is that one of the other Kangs also did what this Kang did and made a TVA that he also somehow was able to find a pocket where time and space doesn't affect it, and he built his own TVA too.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I think would make sense for it to happen. I don't know if the Loki writers in Marvel thought about what I thought about, but that's what I'm thinking about and giving them the benefit of the doubt that that's what they thought about too. But, you know.
I'm kind of with that. My understanding, though, was it was all a setup. The TVA was just like a front for all these, you know, variants employed by Force to do this very dirty work. It was all a setup by a king at some point. One of them, I don't know which one. And so and I think they're going to show up as, you know, his private army of goons in the movies to come. That's what I was thinking about in terms of the trope of who the Avengers fight in the upcoming movies. Like, what's that army look like? You know, like Thanos has got his army of like the 4-armed Knight Rider dudes or whatever. It's like, what's King's bunch of goons.
And they're all going to look like TVA hunters.
I think they're going to be the TVA. I think they're going to be revealed to just have been designed to be this private time army with, you know, really good abilities to jump back and forth within the multiverse.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just glad that they've, you know, canonized the fact that there are branch realities, and now I can go back to believing that Steve and Peggy are living in their own timeline and not living in the current MCU sacred timeline.
Someone else made a point that they're like, well, what if he ran into Kang and Kang gave him a deal just like he did with Loki and Sylvie, and Steve took that deal where it doesn't affect the timeline and he's able to do what, you know, whatever.
But I think what it also establishes is that all of these branches exist anyway, right? Like, they're going to exist. And then, like, what the TVA was, there was no such thing as a sacred timeline, right? It was like Kang just trying to preserve his own reality.
Yes.
Like, the multiverse needs to be free, right? Like, it just, things happen that branch when you make one decision, and all these alternate universes exist. Because I just, to me, just never rung true that Steve Rogers would be living in the current timeline and not doing anything about it. Like, this is the guy who broke the Sokovia Accords 5 minutes into it just because, like, I can't do that. You know what I'm saying? So, like, the fact that he would go back into the 40s and not prevent, you know, Bucky from becoming the Winter Soldier, not prevent Hydra from infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D., I just can't see. I think the timeline that he and Peggy lived in was essentially like everything was perfect. They fixed everything.
Yeah, and it provides a really great come together moment if we get to Marvel Phase 6 or whatever, and they're all out of options, and they gotta go find Steve in the one timeline where he's perfectly happy.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's a great thing to lead up to. I mean, and it gives them time to negotiate those contracts.
You know, I'm getting my very favorite thing that's going to be happening: Spider-Man: No Way Home. I'm gonna get Andrew Garfield.
Well, there you go. And this is all leading up to that.
And people forget, and Far From Home, even though it's a cover story, they do talk about the multiverse in that movie because Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal's character, says, "I'm from the multiverse." Blah,
well,
blah,
that's
blah,
what
blah,
they
blah.
right. That's what they first started planting the seeds for the multiverse.
Yeah.
So it's for sure thing. Like it's
we're gonna need a chart really soon to do this podcast. We're gonna just need
multiverse has always been, you know, just outside of like the story logic. Just what, you know, DC I've always said should have just gone all in on the multiverse, which they're finally doing. Like, there's been more set leaks. I don't know if you saw the set leaks from the Flash set this week, but You
mean the Batman movie?
The Michael Keaton's Batmobile is sitting right there. It's like, how cool is that? Anyway, so, but the multiverse is the best way to do that, where you need to recast people. You couldn't keep up the MCU ad infinitum, right? Like, it's impossible. Star Wars is proving this, right? Like, it's hard to, like, maintain 40 years of continuity.
I think what's really going to drive the nail in the coffin is Indiana Jones 5, honestly. It's sad to say, I love Harrison Ford. I think that's going to be the one where, like, we can't keep trying to continue these.
I forgot who they just said is co-star.
They just cast Antonio Banderas. That's right.
Antonio Banderas. There we go. I'm kind of excited to see that.
Any final thoughts on Loki now that all three of the big Marvel Disney Plus shows? Oh, and one thing, too, I just want to mention. I know we don't have a lot of time left, but earlier I talked about Don Cheadle's Emmy nomination for his 3-second cameo in Falcon Winter. It's like someone put on Twitter, "Show me you haven't watched Falcon Winter Soldier without saying you haven't watched Falcon Winter Soldier."
Yeah.
Let's give Don Cheadle a guest actor nod.
Yeah, we watched the first episode, and
we assumed he's in it.
Yeah, and you could have given this such a nomination to Carl Lumbly.
Well, they should have. I mean, if they're gonna give that nomination for Falcon Winter Soldier, it should have been to Carl Lumbly. But beyond that, beyond the controversy and the snubs, just the fact. How about the fact that the Disney Plus shows walked away with like a gazillion nominations?
Yeah, it's for like almost all of their shows that I think even some of the other ones that are not necessarily like superhero Star Wars related got noms too.
Like just beyond even Disney, right? Like Mandalorian, of course, WandaVision got a bunch. Falcon Winter Soldier got a bunch, but also The Boys got like a best drama. Like we're living in a post superhero.
Okay. I am mad though. Invincible
should have gotten best
get a nomination, animated. Especially over The Simpsons. Like, I'm sorry, I know everyone loves The Simpsons, it's been on forever, but like, have they done anything recently now that's been groundbreaking? And,
The Simpsons are the one who remains as far as the animation show. They fucking can't kill that thing.
Just real quick, do you foretell a space where like the Oscars follow suit and say, okay, let's start nominating shit people actually like and start nominating. I mean, Black Panther, of course, broke that ground a couple years ago, but for the most part, nerd properties don't break through in the Oscar space like the way they do in the Emmy space. And, you know, I think Game of Thrones is a perfect example of like a nerdy show that got a lot of like prestige from like the awards folks. And that kind of paved the way from like, now we're just giving it to all of the shit people watch.
Yeah, I think it's really hard because I think at the end of the day, there's like this like, people still see superheroes as just for kids and silliness, even though you have shows like The Boys and Invincible, and, you know, there's people who just see it as like, it's still ultimately silly. So it's really hard to win over people, which I think that Captain America and the Winter Soldier should have been the first Marvel movie that actually got like serious recognition. Not that Black Panther is like not worthy of it. It's just to say like Falcon and the I'm tired of this show messing up my movie titles.
The old one.
The old one should have
Captain America Winter Soldier.
Yes, Captain America. I think it's because now I know that like Falcon is Captain America. That is just messing up my mind.
Well, I mean, even beyond Captain America Winter Soldier, like the fact that The Dark Knight, we're on actually the anniversary of the weekend of The Dark Knight from 2008. Mm-hmm. That's the big movie that got snubbed at the Oscars. That actually led to the Oscars nominating 10 Best Picture noms now because Dark Knight didn't make the cut in 2009 for
and
the top 5.
And I love that movie, but I know the only reason they nominated Heath Ledger was because he had passed away. If he had not passed away...
But I'm just saying for like Best Picture, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm just in general, like...
I want people to realize that they loved Heath Ledger, and he should have won for other stuff. But the reason why he only got nominated for The Joker is because he unfortunately passed away, and they would have no other work to, like, give him an Oscar for. Like, that's why he got it. It's so sad, and I know it's one of his better performances, but it's the truth. That's why they did that. And then I think also he was up against, like, Robert Downey Jr. from Tropic Thunder. So, like, of course, they were going to give, like, that performance over, you know?
Oh, I thought it was because the Joker is this magic sauce for getting an Oscar nomination.
Okay, but, like...
they repeated it, like, 10 years later.
I know, because Joaquin Phoenix is just, like, he's their golden boy.
But, you know, I mean, but I think it is a interesting situation where, like, it's a 180 from in the past, right? Like, Star Wars got a lot of Oscar nominations when it came out.
Lord of the Rings?
Oh, yeah, Lord of the Rings, of course, was, like, we thought that was, like, what Game of Thrones was for TV, right? Like, when Lord of the Rings kind of broke through, now we're going to start seeing this for other, you know, nerdy properties. But I guess, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't fucking matter.
I mean, I think they will. No, it's such a void, and I think they will. But again, it depends on the quality of the movies that are coming out. You know, like, there's so much excellent writing and producing and designing going on in the TV space right now. Yes, right. It was likely to get all those nominations. In the upcoming slate of Marvel Phase 4 feature films, I don't think there are any gimmies. I think we should see if The Eternals is like incredibly critically well received, or if the Black Panther 2 is incredibly critically well received, which it has, you know, the earmarks of being. You know, I don't like, and I'm rooting for the Marvels to be like super excellent, but who knows? It might just be a superhero movie, or it might just be considered such.
I mean, Eternals has the Chloe Zhao, you know, like...
But she just won last year, so it's not like they're going to... you know, there are all these politics you have to figure in with this thing like the Oscars.
It's really...
They're definitely not going to give it to her next year.
For people who don't follow the industry that well, I think they don't realize how much politics go into the Oscar stuff. I mean, like, they literally...
Campaigning, that's what it is.
Campaigning. They literally have to go to stupid luncheons, and if you don't go to these luncheons and do all of this stuff, you're less likely to win your Oscar.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a lot of glad handing.
Yes.
For sure.
But to that point, Black Panther 2 has the best political seat to be considered seriously when it comes out. We don't know because we don't know what the movie is about. Yeah. But it has that air, it has that panache. It was a really important movie 2 years ago.
Yes.
And you might give it to Ryan Coogler for his body of work, so to speak.
Yeah, they do a lot of stuff like that where they'll be like, oh, they really didn't deserve it technically for this thing. But they've done so much
Al Pacino,
great
Son of a
stuff
Woman,
before.
for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's give it to him now. Like, they do that a lot.
So we'll leave it there for this week. Brittany, what's nerd poppin'?
Of course, what's nerd poppin' for me is the third installment of the Fear Street trilogy. It's Fear Street 1666, which it was just... Scary. The whole entire thing is really, really good. I recommend watching all three of them. It's a really nice, like, callback to 90s, like, slasher films. But also, I really do feel like it does a great job of honoring the work R.L. Stine did, which, if you don't remember, the Fear Street books are all R.L. Stine's book geared toward teens and young adults. And so it's really fun. They're not as gory as the movies. And there's honestly like over 60 books. And they're all like actually one-off stories, and some of them have sequels. And then he has little different side stories that are part of the Fear Street world, but are not like, I don't know. So there's like literally so many things they could do. And the way the third one ended, they can definitely do more movies and stuff. So please make me happy. Because I loved these books in high school, and I'm like rereading them again. And I'm just like, give me Fear Street.
Awesome. Dominic, what's nerd popping?
What's nerd popping for me is Hollywood Reporter did a pretty good article I just read about Marvel creators starting to speak up about their quote-unquote shut-up money. Did you happen to read that?
Yeah, I did.
This is something I'm very interested in because, it's like the Marvel Cinematic Universe progresses. I think it's really good that we gotta take the time to honor and respect the writers and artists who made this shit up in the comic book space. Because, and I'm not complaining here at all, but I'm just trying to lay it out as an industry thing. What Marvel Studios did was they found a way to make a whole bunch of high-concept summer blockbuster movies from a mine of high-concept storylines that already existed as works for hire inside Marvel Comics. That they made that process incredibly efficient. And so it's good to find out that, that they are paying the original comics writers and artists something. Someone was quoted as calling it "shut up money," who decided not to be named, and that's fine. That's fine.
I mean, this broke because Ed Brubaker was very public about not, being interested in Falcon Winter Soldier because of, the fact that he felt that Marvel was mining his creative,
Let's take that situation, for example. Whatever you think about Ed Brubaker, he did create the first storyline, and whoever drew it created that Winter Soldier costume, which inspired 1 million kids in little Winter Soldier costumes. And do we talk about the guy who actually drew it the very first time? That guy should be set up for life. I don't know if he is. Just think about the whole vastness of the costumes and the storylines, which we're now absorbing happily and talking about in this podcast. And then think about like they were actually just made up by some writers and artists as works for hire outside of the Hollywood system. And that's what's good about them, is that they're good ideas, and they've been proven out because they were consumed by comic book fans, and they have some data about like which storylines they liked and didn't like.
The most fascinating thing in that article to me, though, is that like apparently DC, which was famous for like shitting on Schuster and Siegel for Superman, shitting on Bill Finger for his contribution to Batman, they just have this long history of like shitting on their creators, has actually over the last 20 some odd years been really good about compensating the writers and artists whose ideas they've mined for movies. So, as an example, Len Wein, who created Wolverine, said in the article that he got more money for Morgan Freeman's appearances in the Dark Knight trilogy as Lucius Fox, who was a very minor character
and doesn't have a cool
lore.
costume.
Than all of the X-Men films combined.
Yeah,
which is
there's
mind-blowing.
something whack about that. Something really whack. And so anyway, just to circle back to your point about about things like the Oscar show and whether we've come full circle or not. To me, if in a couple of years we're looking at the Oscar show and someone's winning for, the Marvels or Black Panther 2 or whatever it is,
I'm gonna win the Oscar for being Jessica Drew.
Right. So Brittany, when you get up there and give your speech, thanking everyone for whatever went into your performance as Spider-Woman, like, will you remember to? Well, you put me on the spot now because I can't remember who specifically created Spider-Woman. But my point is, I want the Oscar speech
the original person,
to
but
include.
I really like Brian Bendis' run, so I will definitely make sure to thank Brian Bendis.
Right. So say that because people, in the Oscar speeches, people thank their agents and their lawyers and all the people who worked on the movie. Right. I just want them to say Stan Lee's name or say Jack Kirby's name. Then I feel like we've reached a circle that's sort of complete in the acceptance of where this shit came from. And I'm not saying, like, whatever, you don't have to pay them billions of dollars, but pay them some, like, nice shut-up money. That's fine. And recognize their name in the credits. Anyway, that was my little rant. Keith Chow, what's nerd popping for you?
So I'll go a completely different direction and just celebrate the fact that there's so many goddamn toys coming out that I don't know what to do with myself. As you mentioned earlier, Dom, it's supposed to be Comic-Con this weekend. And even though there isn't any, all of the toy companies are revealing all of the cool shit that they would have revealed at Comic-Con. So one example is this toy maker called Super 7. They do a lot of licensed action figures.
Super 7.
Yeah, so they primarily were doing a lot of like Mattel Masters of the Universe figures for the last 10 years. Like when Mattel kind of stopped making the Masters of the Universe classics, they kind of took over, and they're doing G.I. Joe figures, 7-inch G.I. Joe figures, but based on their cartoon looks.
Huh.
Which is interesting. You know, like, it's cool. I'm not sure I'm going to be totally into it because, as we mentioned on this show multiple times, I'm more of a comics guy than the cartoons, but they look really dope. But since we're talking about Marvel Legends revealed they're releasing a Galactus, which is going to be 32 inches tall. And it's part of their what's called HasLab system, which is essentially like a crowdfunding, which is kind of whack, I think, for like multi-billion-dollar corporation like Hasbro.
Like, if you give us money on spec, we'll make this thing?
Yeah, but on the one hand, yeah, it's crowdfunding, but on the other hand, it guarantees it's going to get made. So if they get like 14,000 people to commit to buying it, and it's like $400, which is insane, that they'll actually produce it. So they're doing a 32-inch Galactus. They also announced, although they didn't show what it's going to look like, Black Series 6-inch scale Rancor monster. So like they're really blowing up all of the giant figures.
That one you could kind of make out of Play-Doh, couldn't you? A Rancor monster. I mean, let's be real. I mean, the Galactus, like, that'll take some serious sculpting.
It's
crazy.
Are you
going to get it? Are you one of these people who's pledged to get it? Okay,
I am not. I just think it's cool. I will watch the YouTube videos about it. It's got like LED lights in its face and shit. It's crazy. I'm more partial to the Galactus from the Fantastic Four movie because it's just a puff of smoke, and I think that's a lot easier
have a figure of that
to do than a giant 32. No, it's cool though. It's cool, and so as you know, as the toy guy, I just want to give a shout out to all of the.
You caused me to flash back to that first night of Comic-Con that happens. The preview night happens when we had Comic-Con, so people are making a mad dash for these exclusives and walking around with gigantic toys they can't even carry. You remember that?
Yeah, that's
like,
why
it's
they
one
have the
thing to
giant
get them.
bags they give you at
right,
Comic-Con.
and they're like, they've got 3 of them, and they're like bigger than their own body, and it's like the Unicron like actual transformable.
Yeah.
Like that was a big deal, and was just like so in the way. Anyway,
yeah, it's crazy.
It's an interesting time. Yeah, I think it's good that we're still not. Whatever. It's good that the mask mandate is coming back. I think people are taking this not seriously enough, but we're gonna have another relapse. But I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, wear a mask, people. Brittany, where can people find you wearing a mask on the internet?
You can find me at Hi Brittany Monet on Twitter and Instagram, where I've mainly been tweeting about Fear Street because, like I said, I've been really just kicked back into gear with that. And then you can also follow at Naomi Podcast, which eventually we will be doing the Naomi podcast for the series Naomi. So yeah, that's kind of what I've got going on. Read Fear Street, watch the movies, tell me what y'all think.
Awesome. Dominic?
Oh, I'm Dama, DOMMAH on Instagram or Twitter.
You know, I was just thinking, I know you don't plug Melancholy Ball as much anymore, but with the whole Dom Ball kind of SEO with Space Jam, this is a good time to bring back Melancholy Ball.
Yeah, you're right. I gotta get it prepped for landing. Yeah, I haven't even checked out my SEO recently. I bet there's been more accidental hits than there have been before. I'll definitely prep Melancholy Ball.
Dom Ball is just the perfect. That's where I thought you were going with the whole Dom Ball earlier. I didn't know you were going like, you know, the sexual references, but I thought you were going with the Melancholy.
My mind's a little twisted sometimes. But
I am on Twitter at @TheRealChow, _real_Chow. You can follow me on Instagram at RealKeithChow. Follow the podcast and the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color. Go to hardknockmedia.com to find this and everything else, including my Southern Fried Asian episode with Kevin Kwan, which was recorded in Baltimore a few months ago, virtually, but it was for the Baltimore Pratt Library's Writers Live series. That's also on hardknockmedia.com. Subscribe, download all of the podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get podcasts. Give us a rating and review if you do. Also, subscribe to our Twitch channel, as Jamal mentioned earlier, twitch.tv/nerdscolor, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/nerdscolor, where we're putting a lot of dope videos. This week, it's all Snake Eyes all the time. We got interviews with all of the cast members that it's going up each day before the movie comes out, so check that out. Give us a like and smash that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and all of the funny stuff people say on YouTube.
It's always a little weird when people say smash that subscribe button.
Like, how do you physically smash
You only have to hit it once, honestly.
Actually,
And-
if you hit it too many times, you may accidentally unsubscribe.
Right,
what
that's
I know.
actually, yeah, you're unsubscribing. Speaking of, getting too sexual about things, it's okay to click it once. Don't misinterpret. You don't have to get excited about that subscribe button. It's okay to click it once, I think.
Anyway, that's the Nerds of Color. That's Hard Knock Life. And until next time.
That's all, folks.
Yeah, but wear a mask.